I know you're making a distinction between what you're doing, solvents and glue, and Feldenkrais. And
Oh, 100%.
what would you say are the
This is,
principles?
first of all, you don't repeat things in like do it and then 5 minutes and stop. You don't go to your limits. I do things where you go to the limits of your strength. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Like you'd say somebody in a gym, okay, and then stop. There aren't specific repetitions of exactly the same thing. It's not about for yourself finding a variation that suits you. It has to do with organizing your structure so that you can do something very, very specific. Isolate joints. So in Feldenkrais, you don't talk about isolation in one place and maintaining a strength so you can move in another place. So this is something very much that we do, but you need to know where the joint is, how it moves, how to use it in relation to others, so other muscular groups can function or a different use of the joint. And this is very, very different than how you would do it in Feldenkrais. You'd never do it this particular way in Feldenkrais. The
Mhm.
pacing is also very different. The rhythm is very, very different. The amount of times that you do it. Certain times you have to do 3 repetitions like you do an exercise to really embed it. It has a lot to do with also repeating. When I teach the workshop, every morning we review exactly the same things that we did the day before, and then we add on to them. This you don't ever really do in a Feldenkrais setting whatsoever. You don't use weight in a Feldenkrais setting. You don't focus on trying to build up stamina in a Feldenkrais setting. The focus is very, very, very different. In Feldenkrais, you come up against your habits of movement, but the search is for the pleasant sensation. This doesn't have a focus on the pleasant sensation. People are working out sometimes very hard, very fast in certain types of movements, like and it doesn't have to do with taking it and just lying and looking for that pleasant sensation. Some people find a different kind of pleasant sensation from this very strong use of the muscle. Sometimes some people find I can't do one more repetition because I don't have the stamina right now.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I wouldn't say that it's not pleasant sensation or that I would say that it is, but I guess it depends on how you do it, right?
it depends what your definition of a pleasant sensation is. And a Feldenkrais, from my experience, there's one way to search out a pleasant sensation. And what this means to find your way of an efficient movement. Here's something very different. Yeah, because there's many things. I mean, people jog and they say this is pleasant to me. People do aerobic types of exercise. It's pleasant. People get on I forget what those gyrotronics, and they find it. Now, if you're going to build this up, and people until they get into a certain amount of use, they won't do it. When I get on my bike, only after I don't know 10 kilometers, and I'm working hard or I'm going uphill, for me, that's a type of a pleasant sensation. I wouldn't say that's what you're looking for when I would sit down to do an awareness through movement lesson for myself.
Maybe it's about expanding the notion of different kinds of pleasure then.
This
Yeah.
is absolutely true, but I think for understanding the Feldenkrais method, the way it's taught in awareness through movement, you would be very clear. I would never tell people to go and ride their bikes in that way. So to get that type of a sensation or lift weights for that type of a sensation. Anybody that's gone through a training in the works of Dr. Feldenkrais knows that the whole first year of your program, you are basically trying to understand what you're looking for in yourself to follow so that you can explore your movement and not a concept of some other image, how you should be, what do you want to get fixed, what appears nice, all the different ideas you have. That, and the only way to do that is to seek out a particular type of internal sensation, kinesthetic sensation, of course, to follow in yourself that makes it a pleasant sensation, because this is the way that you become sensitive to not overdoing, to following a movement that's more efficient, to understanding when you're putting into efforting more, efforting less. So of course you have to use this this Weber-Fechner aspect of reducing your effort so that you're able to sense more of the effort that you put in, so you become more sensitive to what you're doing. And then once you have that, it is exploring for looking for a pleasant sensation, because this is what the brain also sort of not registers, but it's sort of a more amenable to, you could say. And this is what people, they get into their flow and they lose themselves in a particular internal feeling. And this is sort of, and then you feel like you're attached to yourself more, you feel more like yourself. So all these things that are in a Feldenkrais type of experience to come into what is a Feldenkrais of a learning experience. This is what we would say is a particular type of a pleasant sensation. If you outspeak that out of the Feldenkrais world, or the Feldenkrais domain world, that of not learning that type, then it has a very different meaning, and you can't explain that verbally to somebody unless they do it in this particular self-exploratory type of learning. So it's somewhat a different phase if you're looking to use to go past your limits in a certain way, to not be down, and to find out in a certain sense that the way of looking for a certain type of efficiency on the floor for yourself, it's a little bit different than when you're up and standing. Can you effort more? Do you effort less? How do you find the joint? How do you not find the joint? Does it feel, can you maintain your muscle strength, right? Stamina of your muscle, because you can use your muscles in a certain way when you do sports. You have to build up. You have to get a certain muscle memory. You have to get a certain muscle stamina, a certain muscle strength, a certain type of tautness in the muscles. This is sort of like if you're going to run a marathon or climb mountains. If you don't do that and your muscles are not used to that, and you start to go up, you're not going to have such an easy time. Or if you haven't skied, a typical thing of a skier, you don't ski the whole season, and then you go out, you might have a catharsis the next day. So you're using your muscles. Usually when you do a Feldenkrais lesson, this is not an experience that you have. You might overdo because you're not in sort of connected to yourself in that way. And then you may have discomfort or pain the next day because you wanted to just follow the right way to do the movement. So, but there are pleasurable sensations in many, many different domains of movement, different than what you would follow in a Feldenkrais type of a way. Otherwise, I don't think there would be so many different types of physical activity, yoga and Pilates and martial arts and all different types of things. You wouldn't necessarily tend to think that you would build up belly muscles like people do sit-ups. You wouldn't think of that enough to do that Feldenkrais. You would think, we do it a different way. We do this, we do that, and the reasons for it. And if they're all legitimate, it depends what you want to do always. It's always what you want to do. If you know what you're doing, go ahead, do whatever you want. So the expression many times in the Feldenkrais is used inside a Feldenkrais way of behaving, but it's applicable to almost anything, I would say.
So how do you support people to not overdo in the solvents and glue process?
I don't. I just tell them, take care of yourself. But this would be with anything. Don't overdo. I mean, don't overdo sitting at your computer for 20 hours a day. Otherwise, you'll know it after a few days, right? I can see that you can relate to that very well. We all do these days. So what is overdoing? This I don't think it's specific to any domain. I think the guiding force is, if you have an injury or you have real discomfort, it should be a sign that it's not good for your body, right? So discomfort is very different than working out hard, right? Or getting an aerobic type of a sensation in the body, or feeling my muscles are really, I'm straining. I haven't done this in a while. I need to do a few more repetitions. Oh boy, can I hold out? But to feel pain, this is something very different. So if your joints are organized in a very specific mechanical way, you usually won't have that type of thing. Now, some people have discomfort because they're doing too little. They need to do a little bit more and raise their tone and get a little bit more stamina. It gets you more invigorating. So pain is not good. Pain is not good. If you're coming from an injury, any kind of an injury for you that people have, the older you are, I mean, I don't know anybody that almost doesn't have some kind of a something that they've managed or dealt with or come out of or whatever it happens to be, that what you would look for is basically to build up. If it's something new, you have to listen in a certain way to not overdo. Not overdo in your eating, not overdo in your drinking, or whatever it is you may happen to start. If you haven't been on your bike and all of a sudden comes spring weather, don't do your 40 miles. Start off slow.
So I know you've spoken about the differences between Feldenkrais and solvents and glue, like how solvents and glue is different than Feldenkrais. I'm wondering if you might speak about what are some principles or aspects that are similar, or where they parallel, or like what are the...
No, it's not that they parallel. It's the Feldenkrais has a thinking behind it. It's a way. One of it is a way of thinking, and in the way of thinking, if you have the way of thinking, you should be able to make applications in the use of the thinking in different ways than Dr. Feldenkrais put it into the system of what is now known as ATM and FI. Okay, so, or in JKA, I call it ATM, abilities through movement and functional hands-on. So you should be able to take it and use the type of systemic methodology how you create the sessions or create the lessons or whatever, and make it an application into another form. If you can only make it into one form, for me, it goes against the Feldenkrais idea, because variation in itself is not a Feldenkrais idea. Variation is a biological evolutionary idea that's necessary, but Feldenkrais talks about in terms of variations, not only Feldenkrais, my God, there's nobody that doesn't talk about variation and movement now. How it's used and how it's applied, what it's used for in terms of the brain, that's a different discussion. But if you only have your thinking focused in one way to say this is the way it's done, because that's the idea of what this Dr. Feldenkrais's thinking brought to light, then I don't find that it's true to the idea itself. It should be able to take the thinking behind it and apply it in different ways.
So what are, for some people that are new to, maybe they're just starting to get into Feldenkrais, they're sort of starting to learn about what it is. What is the thinking, the Feldenkrais thinking that you're
so if I speak about it more at Feldenkrais, I have to also bring in JKA, because my approach now is not just I incorporate the solvents and glue, I incorporate the children's work, I incorporate adult work. So in terms of the names that's used for what the Feldenkrais method is, and Feldenkrais from Dr. Feldenkrais. So Dr. Feldenkrais is thinking, many people use his type of thinking in different ways and for different things. A reversal of the distal and the proximal, right? So we spoke about that last time, right? Or using a same type of a movement in different positions in gravity, okay? Or developing one function, right? Or developing a specific movement and then applying it into a greater sequence. So these are types of Feldenkrais, the Dr. Feldenkrais's way of using those ideas to put them into movement that he called awareness through movement. But the task would be, does it need to be put in to the way that is done in awareness through movement, or can those mechanical ways to bring about change can be used in a different manner, not using the same things that you need to do in ATM, reducing your effort, going slowly to pay attention to things and all the reasons that you would do it in a JKA ATM or a Feldenkrais ATM. Okay, so, and they each have their purposes. So it's similar that you just don't have a sequence of 1, 2, 3, but you have to have it so it creates a particular type of a change and the way those changes, because the way the movements that Dr. Feldenkrais in his thinking was to use it to create change. What are the mechanics of change in movement? So it's the same. And if they are real mechanics, they should be able to apply in all different types of ways in training or whatever you like.
So are you making a distinction then in terms of the mechanics of change, the separating out of the slowing down and reducing effort as that?
100%.
Can
Oh,
you
100%. You
can you
should be.
say a little bit more about how the mechanics of change?
It's the solvents and glue. Things should not have to be done in one way, right? That's that's a basis of Dr. Feldenkrais. But it's not the God sent thing. You should do it that way. No, it's just so you can learn about something. So if you could just, because some people do slow movements or they talk slowly in a way, this will do something to you. If I start to talk in one particular type of a rhythm and look at you in a particular way and relate, you will have a certain type of experience of yourself when I start to speak with my voice in this way. If I apply it into movement and I continue to speak with my voice with you in this way, it will bring you into a type of way of listening to yourself. When I add in the movement, then you will be doing it with the movement and the voice. And if I regulate you in this way 100 times, and then all of a sudden I change my voice and talk about it this way, you won't be able to do it because you'll think it's something different. Now, some people, when they talk this way and they do things and they relate to you, you don't have to do movement. You can sit and you can relax and you can be calm and reduce your stress. And this is a very useful way to do things. Okay. Other people, depending however you talk, you can focus on different aspects and you can lie on the floor and do movements. So there's different components, how you use your voice, how quickly you do things, what do you want to do with the people? Do you want to pace them? What are you doing with your teaching? And there's all different types of ways like that. Okay. How do people feel comfortable? Do people need to be spoken with and relate to a type of a rhythm of speech or a tone of voice or a particular type of a face that will help them feel more at ease? And then they can go on and do whatever activity. Other people need it like, come on, let's go, get down on the floor and do this. And then and they feel they're taken over and they're being controlled. And oh, great, now I'm in the rhythm. I can forget. I don't want to listen to myself in this way. Some people, when they talk to in this type of a way, they get very nervous and they don't want to listen. So separating, if you're going to make distinctions in types of movement, you also have to make the distinctions in the types of domains of the movement that you're dealing with. Is it just the joint? Is it just the muscle? Is it the rhythm? Is it the strength? Is it the repetition? So you have many, many different categories that you have to deal with. Feldenkrais doesn't, the way it's taught, doesn't do that any longer. It does it in one very specific way that everybody more or less follows. So, I mean, it's not a criticism. It's nothing bad or good in terms of judgment. It's an observation. So, in terms of being able to, move your joints in a particular way, if you're standing and if you're told, if you're used to being able to, when you get a little bit tired, just immediately rest, then that's one way you're being conditioned. But who says it has to be that way? Maybe if you'll be able to go a little bit longer, you'll be able to build up something and understand how to move your muscles or your joints or whatever in a very specific, a different kind of a way. And maybe it's better for you. Maybe you need that muscle buildup instead of a lowering of the tonus and just a generalities. So
Mm-hmm.
that helps.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I feel like the doing all the work in standing and how you've organized it and like you're saying, the pacing and the rhythm and the kind of communication, there is for me definitely this experience of being awake, being alive, being invigorated. It's a different quality of presence or of energy or of whatever you want to call it, like tone in myself. And it also that's what I was asking before about emotional stability, or I don't know if the word stability, but just that ability to be in the world and be connected to the world and connected to myself at the same time. It very much is in the direction of things I'm interested in. So, and the awakeness and the eyes open and the ability to sense and feel and be in the room at the same time. I think it has so many lovely
Right.
qualities. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Yes.
So I'm excited about your workshops.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me too.